The morning briefing room fell silent when Commander Martinez dropped the intelligence report on the table. 7 confirmed kills in 3 days. Each target eliminated from impossible distances. No muzzle flash. No sound, no trace evidence left behind. "Gentlemen, we're dealing with something we've never encountered before," Martinez said, his weathered face grave. "Our best reconnaissance teams can't even locate the shooter's position after the fact. The enemy has someone out there who's making our most elite snipers look like amateurs." Staff Sergeant Jake Morrison, a decorated Navy SEAL with 12 years of combat experience, leaned forward. "Sir, with respect, 7 kills could be luck. Maybe multiple shooters working in coordination." Martinez shook his head slowly. "That's what we thought too, Morrison, until we analyzed the ballistics reports." He activated the projector, displaying trajectory analyses that defied conventional sniper tactics. Same rifle, same shooter. Positions that shouldn't be physically possible for sustained accuracy. Whoever this is, they're operating on a level that rewrites everything we know about long-range elimination. The room buzzed with uncomfortable murmurs. These were men who had faced the worst the battlefield could offer, but something in the commander's tone suggested they were about to encounter their greatest challenge yet. "There's something else," Martinez continued. "Intelligence suggests this isn't just any enemy combatant. We're dealing with someone who was trained by the best, someone who knows our methods, our weaknesses, our blind spots, someone who might have once been one of us." As the briefing concluded, and the teams prepared for what would become the most dangerous cat-and-mouse game of their careers, none of them could have imagined that their legendary reputation was about to meet its match, in ways that would challenge everything they believed about warfare, survival, and the true meaning of being invisible on the battlefield. The hunt was about to begin, but the question remained, who exactly was hunting whom? The desert wind carried whispers of death across the rocky terrain as Elena Vasquez adjusted her rifle scope for the 3rd time that morning. Hidden beneath a carefully constructed blind of rocks and desert vegetation, she had been motionless for 14 hours, waiting for the perfect moment. Her ghillie suit, handcrafted with local flora and precise color matching, made her invisible even to trained eyes scanning the landscape below. Elena wasn't supposed to be here. According to official records, Senior Airman Elena Vasquez had died in a helicopter crash 6 months ago during a classified mission in Afghanistan. Her funeral had been attended by her unit, her medals presented to her grieving parents, and her name etched on a memorial wall. But bureaucratic paperwork and reality often existed in different worlds, and Elena had learned to navigate the spaces between them. The truth was more complicated. Elena had survived the crash, but the rescue team that found her weren't American forces. They were members of an international arms-dealing network who saw opportunity in a highly trained military sniper with no official existence. They offered her a choice that wasn't really a choice. Work for them, or disappear permanently into an unmarked grave in the Afghan mountains. For 3 months, she had played along, taking contracts that aligned somewhat with her moral compass, while secretly gathering intelligence about their operations. She fed information to her former handler through encrypted channels, always careful to maintain her cover while slowly building a case that would bring down the entire network.
But today's mission was different.
Today, she had learned that a Navy SEAL team was being deployed to eliminate her. The same government that had declared her dead now wanted to make that declaration permanent. The arms dealers had grown suspicious of her divided loyalties and decided she was too dangerous to keep alive. They had leaked her location and capabilities to military intelligence, spinning a story that painted her as a rogue American sniper, working for enemy forces. Elena checked her watch. The SEAL team would be moving into position within the hour. She had studied their profiles, knew their tactics, understood their strengths and weaknesses. Staff Sergeant Jake Morrison would likely take point, with Rodriguez covering the eastern approach and Chen providing overwatch from the ridge. Thompson would handle communications while Davis and Wilson flanked from the north. Classic SEAL formation for a single-target elimination mission. What they didn't know was that Elena had been watching them since they inserted into the area at dawn. She had identified their landing zone, tracked their movement patterns, and predicted their approach routes with the precision that had made her one of the Army's most effective snipers before her supposed death. The irony wasn't lost on her. She was about to use skills learned serving her country to survive against her country's most elite warriors. But survival wasn't her only goal. She needed these men alive. They were her ticket back to official existence, her chance to expose the truth about her situation and the arms-dealing network that had exploited her. Elena shifted slightly, feeling the familiar weight of her customized M24 rifle. She had modified it extensively during her months in hiding, improving its accuracy and reducing its sound signature. The weapon was perfectly zeroed for the ranges she anticipated using, and she had enough ammunition to handle multiple targets if necessary. Through her scope, she spotted the first signs of movement on the eastern ridge. Rodriguez was taking position exactly where she had predicted, his own rifle glinting briefly in the morning sun before he corrected his angle. Elena smiled grimly. These were good soldiers, but they were operating with incomplete information and underestimating their target. The next hour unfolded like a deadly chess match. Elena watched as the SEAL team moved into their planned positions, each man following protocols that she had helped develop during her years of service. They were thorough, professional, and completely unaware that their target had been observing them since before they began their approach. Jake Morrison's voice crackled through their communications, which Elena was monitoring through equipment she had acquired from the arms dealers. Overwatch, report status. Chen here. I have visual on the target area but no movement. Possible hide. Sighted grid reference 7429115. Elena almost laughed. Chen was looking directly at her secondary position, the one she had deliberately prepared as a decoy. It was convincing enough to fool thermal imaging and had the right sightlines for the target profile they were expecting. Copy that, Morrison replied. Thompson, Davis, Wilson, move to flanking positions. Rodriguez, maintain eastern coverage. We go on my mark. Elena took a deep breath and began her own countdown. In 60 seconds, she would begin the most dangerous gambit of her life. She needed to neutralize each member of the team without killing them, extract information about who had sent them, and somehow convince them that she wasn't the enemy they had been told to eliminate. The desert around her seemed to hold its breath as she prepared to engage 6 of the most dangerous men on the planet. But Elena Vasquez had advantages they couldn't anticipate. She knew their training because she had received similar training. She understood their mindset because she had once shared it. Most importantly, she was fighting not just for her life, but for her identity, her honor, and her chance to return home. As the SEAL team began their final approach, Elena whispered a prayer learnt in childhood and began to move. The deadly dance was about to begin, and she intended to lead every step. The morning sun climbed higher into the cloudless sky, casting sharp shadows across the rocky terrain that would soon become the stage for a confrontation that would challenge everything both sides believed about warfare, loyalty, and the true meaning of serving one's country. In the distance, vultures circled lazily on thermal currents, as if sensing that the desert was about to receive new stories written in blood and determination. Elena's finger rested lightly on the trigger as she tracked Rodriguez through her scope. The SEAL sniper had settled into his position on the eastern ridge, completely unaware that he was being observed. His positioning was textbook perfect for covering the approach routes to Elena's decoy position, but it left him exposed to her actual location. She could take the shot now. A clean hit to his shoulder would disable him without permanent damage, but it would also alert the entire team to her presence and location. Elena needed something more elegant, something that would demonstrate her capabilities while maintaining the psychological advantage. Instead, she reached for her secondary weapon, a modified crossbow that she had acquired during her time with the arms dealers. Silent, accurate, and perfect for delivering non-lethal payloads. She had spent hours preparing specialized bolts designed to inject a fast-acting sedative that would incapacitate a target within seconds. Elena adjusted her position slightly, bringing the crossbow to bear on Rodriguez's location. The range was challenging, nearly 400 meters, but she had practiced this shot dozens of times using similar terrain features. Wind was minimal, and she had a clear line of sight through a gap in the rocks. She squeezed the trigger slowly, feeling the familiar release as the bolt flew silently through the morning air. 4 seconds later, she saw Rodriguez jerk slightly, then slump forward as the sedative took effect. His rifle remained in position, making it appear that he was still actively providing overwatch. Elena quickly shifted back to her primary rifle, scanning for the next target. Wilson was moving through a rocky ravine approximately 600 meters to the north, following a path that would bring him to a flanking position. His movement pattern was predictable, trained responses to terrain features that Elena recognized from her own experience. She let Wilson advance until he reached a natural choke point between 2 large boulder formations. The positioning would give him excellent cover once he was through, but for 30 seconds, he would be exposed and stationary as he navigated the narrow passage. Elena's second crossbow bolt found its target just as Wilson was checking his 6 before moving through the gap. He went down silently, his body concealed by the rocks from his teammates' view. To anyone monitoring his position, it would appear that he was taking cover and preparing for the next phase of movement. 2 down, 4 to go. Elena felt no satisfaction in these small victories. Every second that passed increased the risk that someone would notice their missing communications or suspicious positioning. She needed to accelerate her timeline. Davis was the next to present an opportunity. The demolitions expert was moving toward what appeared to be a cave entrance, likely preparing to clear it as a potential hiding spot. Elena had used that same cave during her reconnaissance, and she knew it had a false back wall that created an echo chamber perfect for amplifying sound. Instead of using the crossbow, Elena picked up a small stone and threw it with calculated force toward the cave entrance. The stone struck the back wall and created a series of echoes that sounded remarkably like movement from deeper within the cave system. Davis immediately switched to high alert, raising his rifle and moving more cautiously toward the entrance. Elena waited until he was positioned directly in front of the opening, then fired her third crossbow bolt. Davis dropped just inside the cave mouth, hidden from view but positioned in a way that would suggest he was investigating the interior. 3 down. Elena allowed herself a moment of grim satisfaction before refocusing on the remaining threats. Thompson, the communications specialist, was maintaining position near what appeared to be the team's command post. Chen remained in overwatch, though his position was becoming increasingly untenable as his teammates went silent. Jake Morrison, the team leader, was the wild card. Elena had been tracking his movement, but he had disappeared into a section of terrain that offered multiple concealment options. His military record indicated exceptional tactical awareness and adaptability. He would be the most dangerous remaining opponent. Elena made the decision to take Chen next. The sniper's overwatch position gave him the best overall view of the battlefield, and his elimination would effectively blind the remaining team members. She began moving carefully through her prepared routes, using techniques learned during survival training to remain invisible even while in motion. The approach to Chen's position required crossing 200 meters of exposed terrain, but Elena had spent hours identifying dead zones where natural terrain features would mask her movement. She moved in short rushes, timing her advances to coincide with wind gusts that would mask any small sounds. Chen was focused intently on scanning the target area through his scope, looking for movement around Elena's decoy position. She approached him from behind and slightly to his left, moving with the patience of a natural predator. When she was within 50 meters, she switched back to the crossbow. The bolt struck Chen in the neck, and he went down immediately. Elena quickly moved to secure his position, checking to ensure he was unconscious but unharmed. She took his radio and rifle, then arranged his body to appear as if he was still maintaining overwatch. 4 down, 2 to go. But now Elena faced her greatest challenge. Morrison and Thompson were both experienced operators who would quickly realize something was wrong when their team members failed to report in. She needed to force them into making mistakes while avoiding the trap of overconfidence. Elena activated Chen's radio and spoke in a whispered voice that could belong to any of the team members. Movement at grid reference 7. 4, 3, 1. 1, 2, 8. Possible target relocation. The response came immediately from Morrison. Rodriguez confirmed visual. When no response came, Elena could hear the tension in Morrison's voice as he tried again. Rodriguez, respond. Elena waited 30 seconds, then keyed the radio again. This is Wilson. Rodriguez appears to be out of communication. Recommend immediate rally at Rally Point Alpha. She was gambling that Morrison would react predictably to the threat of losing team members, bringing himself and Thompson to a location where she could engage them both. Rally Point Alpha would be their predetermined fallback position, likely somewhere that offered good defensive capabilities but limited escape routes. Morrison's response confirmed her prediction. Copy that. Thompson, move to Rally Point Alpha. I'm moving to Rodriguez's last known position. Elena smiled grimly. Morrison was making exactly the choice she had hoped for. By splitting up to investigate and regroup simultaneously, he was giving her the opportunity to eliminate Thompson while he was focused on searching for his missing teammates. She began moving immediately toward the rally point, using her knowledge of the terrain to arrive ahead of Thompson. The communications specialist would be expecting to meet up with Wilson and possibly other team members. Instead, he would find Elena waiting with her crossbow ready. The endgame was approaching, but Elena knew that Morrison represented her greatest challenge yet. He would be suspicious, alert, and increasingly desperate as he discovered his team members' conditions. She needed to be perfect in her execution, because a cornered SEAL team leader was perhaps the most dangerous opponent she could face. As she settled into position near Rally Point Alpha, Elena reflected on the strange turns her life had taken. 6 months ago, She had been a decorated soldier serving her country with pride. Now she was using those same skills to survive against her former allies, fighting for the chance to reclaim an identity that officially no longer existed. The sun continued its climb across the desert sky, and Elena prepared for the most crucial phase of her deadly game of cat and mouse. Thompson arrived at Rally Point Alpha with his rifle ready and his head on a swivel. Elena watched him from her concealed position 30 meters away, noting the tension in his movements and the way he constantly checked his radio for communications that weren't coming. The communications specialist was well trained, but his specialty lay in technology and coordination rather than direct combat, and it showed in his approach to the potentially hostile environment. Elena had chosen her position carefully. Rally Point Alpha was a natural depression surrounded by low rocky walls that provided excellent cover but limited visibility beyond the immediate area. Thompson would feel secure once he settled in, but he would also be effectively trapped until other team members arrived to provide overwatch. She watched Thompson establish a defensive perimeter, setting up his radio equipment and trying to re-establish communication with his teammates. His growing frustration was evident as each attempt to raise Rodriguez, Wilson, Davis, or Chen resulted in either silence or unintelligible static. Elena made her move when Thompson was focused on adjusting his radio antenna. She approached from his blind spot, moving with the silent precision that had made her legendary among her former unit. The crossbow bolt struck him in the shoulder, and he went down with barely a sound. 5 down, 1 to go. But Elena knew that Jake Morrison represented a completely different level of challenge. As she secured Thompson's position and equipment, she monitored his radio for any communication from the team leader. Morrison's voice came through clearly, tense but controlled. "Thompson, report status at Rally Point Alpha." Elena waited, letting the silence stretch until Morrison tried again with increasing urgency. "Any station, this is Morrison. Report status immediately." Elena keyed the radio using Thompson's call sign. "This is Thompson. Rally Point Alpha is secure. No visuals on other team members. Request immediate backup and extraction." There was a long pause before Morrison responded. "Thompson, confirm your identity with yesterday's authentication code." Elena's heart rate spiked. She had no way of knowing the daily authentication codes, and her deception had just been exposed. Morrison now knew that someone else was using his team's communication equipment, which meant he understood that his entire unit had been compromised. Instead of responding, Elena switched off the radio and began moving immediately. Morrison would be analyzing the situation, trying to determine how many enemies he was facing and what had happened to his team. His training would tell him to assume the worst-case scenario and act accordingly. Elena knew Morrison's service record by heart. 12 years of special operations experience, multiple deployments in high-risk environments, decorated for valor under fire, and known for his ability to adapt quickly to changing tactical situations. He wouldn't panic, but he also wouldn't underestimate the threat level. She moved to a position that gave her overwatch of the entire area while remaining concealed. Morrison would likely attempt to reach his teammates' last known positions to assess their status, but he would also be expecting an ambush at each location. His approach would be methodical but cautious, using techniques designed to minimize exposure while gathering maximum intelligence. Elena spotted Morrison 40 minutes later, moving carefully through the terrain toward Rodriguez's position on the eastern ridge. His movement pattern was impressive, using natural cover and varying his routes in ways that made tracking difficult. But Elena had the advantage of knowing the ground intimately, and she had prepared for exactly this scenario. Morrison reached Rodriguez's position and quickly discovered his unconscious teammate. Elena watched through her scope as he checked for a pulse and examined Rodriguez for injuries. She could see the moment when Morrison realized that Rodriguez had been sedated rather than killed, which would change his entire tactical assessment. A live enemy who was capturing rather than eliminating SEAL team members suggested either interrogation purposes or a more complex objective than simple assassination. Morrison would be recalculating everything he thought he knew about his opponent. Elena had positioned herself to intercept Morrison's most likely route between Rodriguez's position and Wilson's last known location. She settled into a hide site that offered excellent concealment and multiple escape routes, then began the waiting game that would determine the outcome of their confrontation. Morrison appeared 20 minutes later, moving even more cautiously than before. He had clearly found Wilson's position as well, and confirmed the pattern of sedation rather than elimination. His tactical assessment would now include the possibility that he was facing someone with specialized non-lethal capabilities and intimate knowledge of SEAL operating procedures. Elena had prepared for this moment by setting up a series of false indicators that would suggest multiple possible firing positions. Morrison would have to choose which threat to address first, And that choice would create the opening she needed. She watched Morrison identify 3 potential sniper positions and begin working to eliminate them systematically. His approach was textbook perfect for dealing with multiple unknown threats, but it was also predictable to someone who had received similar training. Elena let Morrison clear the first 2 positions without interfering, allowing him to build confidence in his tactical assessment. When he moved toward the 3rd position, she was ready. The crossbow bolt struck Morrison in the leg just as he was preparing to clear the final hide site. But instead of going down immediately, Morrison rolled behind cover and returned fire in Elena's direction. The sedative dose hadn't been sufficient to incapacitate him immediately, and his combat experience was helping him fight off the effects. Elena cursed silently as Morrison's rifle fire forced her to abandon her position. She had underestimated his physical conditioning and resistance to the sedative compound. Now she was facing exactly the situation she had hoped to avoid, a direct firefight with a wounded but very dangerous SEAL team leader. Morrison's voice rang out across the rocky terrain. "I don't know who you are, but you've made a serious mistake. My team will be missed, and backup units are already en route. Surrender now, and we can discuss this situation like professionals." Elena almost smiled at Morrison's attempt to negotiate from a position of weakness. But she also recognized the truth in his words. This mission had taken longer than planned, and eventually other units would be deployed to investigate the team's failure to report in. She made a decision that would either end the confrontation quickly or escalate it to a level that could prove fatal for both of them. Elena called out from her new position. "Staff Sergeant Morrison, my name is Senior Airman Elena Vasquez. Check your classified personnel files for my status, and you'll understand why this situation is more complicated than your briefing indicated." The silence that followed her revelation stretched for nearly a minute. Elena could imagine Morrison processing this information, trying to reconcile his mission parameters with the claim that his target was supposedly a dead American service member. When Morrison finally responded, his voice carried a different tone.
"Vasquez died in Afghanistan 6 months ago. I was at her memorial service."
Elena felt a mixture of vindication and sadness at his words.
Someone had cared enough to attend her funeral, even though they had apparently accepted orders to eliminate her when she turned up alive. She continued her explanation, while carefully repositioning to maintain her tactical advantage. "I survived the crash, Morrison, but the rescue team wasn't American. I've been undercover for 3 months, gathering intelligence on an arms-dealing network. Someone leaked my location and painted me as a rogue operator to cover their own tracks." Morrison's response was immediate and skeptical. "Prove it." Elena had anticipated this moment and prepared accordingly. She pulled out a piece of equipment that would either validate her claims or confirm Morrison's suspicions about her loyalties. It was time to reveal the full scope of the game that had been played with all of their lives. Elena reached into her pack and withdrew a secured communication device that Morrison would immediately recognize. It was a /P RC 152 tactical radio, modified with encryption capabilities that were only available to intelligence operatives working deep cover assignments. The device contained authentication codes and contact frequencies that would verify her claims about working undercover for American intelligence. She activated the radio's emergency beacon function, which would transmit her operative identification codes directly to military intelligence headquarters. Within minutes, Morrison's own command structure would receive verification that Elena Vasquez was indeed alive, officially classified, and operating under legitimate intelligence authority. "Morrison, check your secure command frequency in 30 seconds, Elena called out. "You're about to receive authentication that will change everything about this mission." Elena used the waiting time to move to a position where she could observe Morrison while maintaining cover. She watched him check his own communication equipment, confusion evident in his body language, as he processed the implications of her claims. Morrison's radio crackled to life with an encrypted transmission from his command authority. Elena couldn't hear the specific content, but she could see Morrison's reaction as he received confirmation that Senior Airman Elena Vasquez was officially listed as deep cover intelligence operative, presumed killed in action but recently reactivated for a classified mission. The silence that followed was profound. Elena watched Morrison lower his rifle slightly as he absorbed the reality that everything about his mission parameters had been false. He had been sent to eliminate an American intelligence operative based on fabricated evidence and manufactured intelligence. Morrison's voice carried a different tone when he spoke again. "Vasquez, if you're really who you claim to be, then we've both been played. Someone used official channels to set up an assassination attempt against one of our own operatives. Elena felt relief washing over her as she recognized the change in Morrison's attitude. He was beginning to understand the scope of the deception that had brought them both to this deadly confrontation. She emerged from cover slowly, keeping her hands visible but ready to move if Morrison's acceptance proved to be temporary. "Morrison, your team isn't dead. They're sedated with a compound that will wear off in about 2 hours. I needed to neutralize the threat without causing permanent harm to fellow service members." Morrison remained alert but lowered his weapon completely. "How did you know our approach routes and timing?" "Someone with high-level access provided you with intelligence about our mission." Elena nodded grimly. "The same people who wanted me dead also wanted to eliminate any chance of you discovering the truth about my situation. They leaked intelligence about your mission to me through arms dealer contacts, expecting me to kill you and your team in self-defense." That would have eliminated both their problems simultaneously. As Morrison processed this information, Elena began moving toward the positions where his team members lay unconscious. "Help me check on your people. Rodriguez should be regaining consciousness soon, and we need to be prepared for their confusion when they wake up." Morrison followed cautiously, still processing the complex web of deception that had brought them together. "Who are we really fighting here, Vasquez? Who has enough access to manipulate both intelligence reports and mission assignments?" Elena had been asking herself the same question for weeks. Her investigation into the arms-dealing network had revealed connections that reached deep into military and intelligence hierarchies, but she hadn't yet identified the key players who were orchestrating the larger conspiracy. They reached Rodriguez's position first. The SEAL sniper was beginning to stir, his eyes unfocused but aware. Morrison knelt beside his teammate while Elena maintained overwatch, still uncertain about how the other team members would react to her presence. Rodriguez's first words were predictably hostile. "Morrison, where's the target? Did we complete the mission?" Morrison placed a restraining hand on Rodriguez's shoulder. "Stand down, Rodriguez. The situation has changed significantly. We've been operating on compromised intelligence." Elena watched the confusion in Rodriguez's eyes as Morrison began explaining the true circumstances of their mission. Similar scenes played out as they reached each of the other team members, with Morrison vouching for Elena's legitimacy, while his teammates struggled to reconcile their mission briefing with the new reality. Within an hour, all 6 SEAL team members were conscious and functional, though still dealing with the after-effects of the sedative. Elena had shared her intelligence about the arms-dealing network and the evidence she had gathered during her months undercover. Thompson, the communications specialist, was particularly valuable in analyzing the electronic evidence Elena had collected. His technical expertise revealed sophisticated methods for infiltrating and manipulating military communication systems, suggesting that their enemies had capabilities far beyond typical criminal organizations. Wilson examined the weapons and equipment Elena had acquired from the arms dealers, identifying several items that were supposed to be restricted to military use only. The chain of custody for these weapons would provide crucial leads for investigating the network's connections to legitimate military suppliers. Davis used his demolitions expertise to analyze explosive devices Elena had documented during her undercover work. His assessment revealed that someone with advanced military training was providing technical specifications and tactical guidance to the arms dealers. Chen's sniper expertise helped Elena correlate the ballistic evidence from previous missions with the weapons she had access to, creating a comprehensive picture of the network's operational capabilities and methods. Jake Morrison coordinated the analysis while developing a tactical plan for exposing and dismantling the conspiracy. His leadership experience was crucial in transforming 6 individual specialists into a cohesive team focused on a new mission objective. As the day progressed, Elena found herself working alongside the same men who had been sent to kill her just hours earlier. The trust was tentative but growing, as they recognized their shared commitment to serving their country honestly. Morrison made the decision to delay their scheduled check-in with command, giving the team time to gather evidence and prepare a comprehensive report that would expose the full scope of the deception. They couldn't risk reporting their findings through compromised communication channels. Elena shared detailed intelligence about the arms dealers' operational schedules, safe houses, and key personnel. Her months undercover had provided her with access to information that would be crucial for planning operations against the network. The SEAL team's expertise complemented Elena's intelligence perfectly. Together, they began developing a plan that would allow them to capture key figures from the arms-dealing network while simultaneously gathering evidence about their connections to American military and intelligence personnel. As evening approached, the unlikely team prepared to transform from hunters into a coordinated strike force. Elena had succeeded in avoiding elimination, but now she faced an even greater challenge, proving her loyalty while helping to expose a conspiracy that reached into the highest levels of the military hierarchy. The desert around them seemed to approve of their newfound alliance as the sun set behind distant mountains. casting long shadows that would soon conceal their movement toward targets who had no idea that their carefully orchestrated plans were about to collapse around them. Morrison looked at Elena with newfound respect as they finalized their mission planning.
Vasquez, when this is over, there are going to be a lot of questions about your status and your actions over the past 6 months.
Elena nodded, understanding the complexity of her situation. I know, Morrison. But right now, we have the opportunity to prevent other operatives from being burned and to stop weapons from reaching enemy forces. That's worth the risk of facing a court-martial later. The night ahead would test everything they had learned about working together, and Elena knew that success would require perfect coordination between 7 people who had been enemies just hours earlier.
The abandoned compound 20 kilometers south of their position became the focal point for the most important mission of Elena's life. Intelligence gathered during her undercover months had revealed that the arms dealers would be conducting a major transaction tonight, transferring both weapons and intelligence to buyers whose identities remained unknown.
Morrison's team had transformed their approach from a simple elimination mission to a complex operation, requiring surveillance, evidence gathering, and coordinated strikes against multiple targets simultaneously. Elena's intimate knowledge of the compound's layout and the dealer's security procedures would be crucial for success. They moved through the desert darkness using night vision equipment and communication protocols designed to maintain absolute stealth. Elena led the way, guiding the SEAL team along routes she had memorized during previous visits to the compound. The target location was a converted mining facility that provided excellent cover for illegal activities. Multiple buildings offered storage space and meeting areas, while the remote location minimized the risk of unwanted attention. Elena had counted at least 15 armed guards during her previous visits, along with sophisticated electronic surveillance systems. Morrison deployed his team with precision that reflected years of experience in similar operations. Rodriguez and Chen established overwatch positions that covered all major approach routes and escape paths. Wilson and Davis moved to secure the perimeter and neutralize external guards. Thompson prepared electronic surveillance equipment that would intercept and record all communications from inside the compound. Elena's role was perhaps the most dangerous. She would enter the compound using credentials and protocols established during her undercover work, gathering evidence while the SEAL team provided backup and prepared to intervene if her cover was blown. The arms dealers were expecting her to deliver intelligence about American military deployments, information she had been carefully fabricating with guidance from her intelligence handlers. Tonight's meeting would supposedly finalize a major weapons deal while discussing plans for future operations. Elena approached the main gate of the compound with confidence that masked her internal tension. The guards recognized her immediately, greeting her with the casual familiarity that came from months of regular contact. Her cover identity as a rogue American operative had been carefully maintained, and she showed no signs of the stress that came from knowing her former teammates were positioned to eliminate these same guards if necessary. Inside the compound's main building, Elena found herself facing the 3 key figures she had been investigating for months. Viktor Kozlov was the network's operational commander, a former Russian Spetsnaz operative with connections throughout the international arms trade. Sarah Chen was the financial coordinator, an American expatriate who had used her CIA training to establish money laundering operations across multiple countries. Marcus Webb was the intelligence broker, a former Defense Intelligence Agency analyst who specialized in selling classified information to the highest bidders. The meeting began with routine discussions about payment schedules and delivery timelines. But Elena quickly guided the conversation toward topics that would provide evidence of the conspiracy she had been investigating. Her questions about American military contacts and intelligence sources were answered with disturbing details about corruption within multiple government agencies. Viktor Kozlov spoke casually about having sources within the Pentagon who provided advance warning about military operations. Sarah Chen described financial arrangements with defense contractors who diverted weapons to unauthorized buyers. Marcus Webb detailed methods for accessing classified intelligence databases and selling information to foreign governments. Elena recorded everything using equipment hidden within her clothing, while maintaining her cover as an interested partner in their operations. The evidence she was gathering would be sufficient to prosecute major cases against dozens of individuals involved in the conspiracy. But the most shocking revelation came when Marcus Webb mentioned their plans for eliminating Elena herself. He described how they had manipulated military intelligence to authorize a SEAL team mission against her, expecting that she would either be killed or would eliminate the SEAL team in self-defense. Webb smiled coldly as he explained their backup plans. If Morrison's team had failed to eliminate you, we were prepared to activate additional assets. Several other military units have been briefed about your supposed rogue status, and they're ready to act on short notice. Elena felt ice in her veins as she realized the full scope of the trap that had been set for her. Even if she survived tonight's confrontation, there would be other hunters coming for her, based on the same fabricated intelligence that had brought Morrison's team to the desert. The meeting was interrupted by the sound of gunfire from outside the building. Elena's heart raced as she realized that something had gone wrong with the carefully planned operation. Either the SEAL team had been discovered, or additional security forces had arrived unexpectedly. Viktor Kozlov immediately drew his sidearm while ordering his security team to secure all exits. Sarah Chen began destroying documents and electronic equipment that contained sensitive information about their operations. Marcus Webb activated emergency communication protocols that would alert other members of the conspiracy to evacuate their own positions. Elena found herself trapped in the middle of a developing firefight with three of the most dangerous individuals she had ever encountered. Her cover was intact for the moment, but any attempt to help the SEAL team would immediately expose her true loyalties. Morrison's voice came through her concealed radio earpiece. "Elena, we've got multiple hostiles moving to surround the building. External security is neutralized, but additional forces are arriving from the south. We need to extract you now." Elena made a split-second decision that would determine whether months of undercover work would result in successful prosecution of the conspiracy. She drew her concealed pistol and announced her true identity to the three arms dealers who had been planning her elimination. The gunfight that followed was brief but intense. Elena's position near the room's main exit gave her a tactical advantage, while the arms dealers found themselves caught between her fire and the SEAL team's assault from multiple directions. Viktor Kozlov went down immediately, struck by Elena's precise shooting before he could bring his own weapon to bear. Sarah Chen attempted to reach a panic button that would trigger explosive charges throughout the compound, but Rodriguez's sniper shot through the building's window eliminated her threat. Marcus Webb proved more resourceful, using smoke grenades and flashbang devices to create confusion while attempting to escape through a hidden exit Elena hadn't known existed. But Wilson and Davis had positioned themselves to intercept exactly this kind of contingency, and Webb found himself surrounded before he could clear the building. Within 15 minutes, the compound was secure and all three key figures were either captured or eliminated. Thompson's electronic surveillance had recorded detailed evidence of the conspiracy, while Elena's undercover recordings provided testimony that would support prosecution of dozens of additional defendants. But their success came with immediate complications. Elena's radio intercepts revealed that backup forces were en route from multiple directions, including military units that had been activated using the same fabricated intelligence that had originally targeted her for elimination. Morrison made the tactical decision to evacuate immediately rather than attempting to hold the compound against superior forces. The evidence they had gathered was sufficient to expose the conspiracy, but only if they survived long enough to deliver it to legitimate authorities. The SEAL team extracted Elena and their captured prisoner, using routes that avoided the approaching military units. Their helicopter extraction point was 20 kilometers away, requiring several hours of movement through hostile territory, while carrying evidence that could expose corruption at the highest levels of government. Elena ran alongside the same men who had been sent to kill her just 24 hours earlier, carrying intelligence that would vindicate her actions and expose the conspiracy that had destroyed her official identity. The irony wasn't lost on her that these SEALs had become her greatest allies in a fight for truth and justice. As they reached the extraction point and prepared for helicopter pickup, Elena reflected on the strange journey that had transformed her from a presumed dead soldier into an undercover operative, and finally into a whistleblower whose testimony would reshape military intelligence operations. Morrison placed a hand on her shoulder as the helicopter approached. "Vasquez, whatever happens when we get back, know that you've served your country with honor. Your actions tonight probably saved dozens of lives and prevented weapons from reaching enemy forces." Elena nodded, understanding that her fight was far from over. She would face investigations, court proceedings, and challenges to her military status. But she would face them as Elena Vasquez, United States Air Force, rather than as a ghost haunting the desert with no identity and no hope of redemption. The helicopter lifted off into the dawn sky, carrying 7 soldiers who had learned that the greatest enemies sometimes wore friendly faces, while the greatest allies could emerge from the most unlikely circumstances. Below them, the desert stretched endlessly towards horizons that promised both new challenges and new opportunities for those brave enough to seek truth in a world built on carefully constructed lies.